Frozen chicken nuggets might be the most forgiving thing you can drop into a grocery cart. They are what you reach for on the evenings when nobody has the energy to cook, or for the kid whose entire diet is maybe 4 foods, or simply for speed. No one stands at that freezer door feeling guilty about a bag of nuggets. And that low guard is precisely the reason this part of the store gets away with so much. Underneath the dinosaur molds, the cheerful logos, and the gentle vocabulary of natural and organic, a handful of these bags are carrying more than a dull dinner. Some are just a poor deal, salt doing an impression of protein. Some are quiet nutritional letdowns wearing a healthy costume, and a few have collected the sort of history that has nothing to do with flavor anymore. The moment a bag disappears from shelves because a shopper found metal, or plastic, or bone inside it, taste has left the room entirely. What is left is trust, and trust is the single thing a package cannot manufacture. Maybe you have stood there before, weighing the premium bag against the cheap one, unsure whether the extra money buys a better nugget or just better advertising. If so, this is for you, because the truthful answer is rarely the one printed on the front. So we are going to tidy up this freezer aisle together. 5 frozen chicken nugget brands that deserve a second thought, and 5 that genuinely earn a spot in your freezer. The rankings ignore the mascot and ignore the bag. They are built on recalls, on the figures stamped across the back panel, on how the meat is actually assembled, and on which names have any credibility left in the bank. Hang on until the end, because you will leave holding a handful of quick checks that unmask a weak nugget long before the oven ever heats up. And there is a single fact about who owns these brands that quietly rearranges the whole aisle. We will begin at the floor with the bag that feels cheap for a very honest reason. Number 5. On the avoid side, Encore chicken nibblers. Somewhere in every freezer case sits a bag competing on nothing but price. And this is it. No recall, no dramatic headline here. The trouble is subtler, and it hides on the back panel where almost nobody bothers to look. A 5-piece serving hands you 200 calories, 12 grams of fat, 670 milligrams of sodium, and a mere 9 grams of protein. Let that settle. This is a food designed entirely around chicken, yet the salt is carrying the load the meat was supposed to carry. So let me give you a trick for reading any nugget bag fast. Put the sodium number in milligrams beside the protein number in grams. Encore's is 670 against 9, which works out to roughly 74 milligrams of sodium riding on every gram of protein. Once that figure climbs to 5, 6, 7 times more salt than protein, you have stopped buying a protein and started buying seasoned salt shaped like a nugget. Keep that number handy, because it returns later. Think of it as the salt support ratio, and Encore is the purest illustration of it anywhere in this aisle. And there is a reason salt does so much lifting inside a cheap nugget. Sodium is where flavor comes from when the chicken runs thin. It makes a watery, low-protein, forgettable bite register as food, and it costs almost nothing next to real breast meat. So a high salt support ratio is more than a health footnote. It is a readout of how much genuine chicken is even in the thing between your teeth. The more the salt performs, the less the meat is contributing. The odd twist is who stands behind it. Encore is no scrappy regional outfit. It runs out of Illinois under a company that answers to OSI Group, one of the biggest meat suppliers on earth. So even the throwaway bargain bag is a child of big meat. Tuck that away, because the ownership thread only gets tangled from here. And as soon as the aisle crosses from lousy math into actual foreign objects, the trouble stops being easy to shrug off. Number 4. Applegate Naturals. Before Applegate sells you chicken, it sells you calm. Never any antibiotics. Raised humanely. Muted, tidy packaging in soft tones, the kind engineered to relax you before you ever flip the bag over. Which is exactly why this one stings more than the price bag did. A brand whose entire identity is peace of mind leaves itself almost no room for what actually occurred. In March of 2016, Applegate Naturals nuggets were pulled after customers reported small pieces of solid, clear plastic in the product. Nobody got sick, and yes, that counts for something. But here is what the serene label leaves out. It had happened before. A nearly identical recall over clear plastic had already struck Applegate nuggets back in 2014. 2 separate times, the same category of hazard. Now trace the wire, because this is where the reassurance really starts to buckle. Both of those recalls lead to one facility. Applegate did not make these nuggets. Perdue did. Remember that name, because Perdue turns up further along this same list, and not for anything flattering. So the premium wellness bag was being run off an industrial line belonging to a company that lands on the avoid side in its own right. And Applegate is not the plucky independent its packaging suggests either. It has belonged to Hormel, the corporation behind Spam, since 2015 in a deal worth around $775 million. Serene on the front, anything but in the paperwork. And the next bag drags the physical hazard even further into the open. Number 3. Wegmans. Wegmans does not carry the largest name on this list, and frankly that strips the situation down. There is no nationwide ad campaign to argue with, only a store label a lot of devoted shoppers trust on reputation alone. In January of 2025, Wegmans recalled its frozen, fully cooked breaded chicken breast nuggets after several customers flagged what looked like bone fragments. Federal inspectors at FSIS put out a public health alert on the very same product, which had reached stores across 8 states plus Washington, D.C. This is the point where flavor stops mattering completely. Nobody grades a bone fragment on a curve. And it is worth pausing here because it exposes something running silently beneath this entire category. Plenty of budget nuggets are not shaped from clean cuts of breast. They start as what the trade calls mechanically separated chicken, a paste made by driving whole carcasses through machinery that crushes bone and tissue together and squeezes the result through a screen. The federal rulebook even caps how much bone is allowed to survive that process. When your nugget begins life as that kind of slurry, a bone fragment is not some freak event. It is the process leaking into view. Which is exactly why the next brand you will hear praised goes out of its way to swear it does none of this. But first, we have to reach the recall that traded plastic and bone for wire. Number 2. Perdue. Perdue is one of those names families grab without thinking twice. It has been around forever. It wears the wholesome image well, and that reflex trust is exactly what makes this one register. In August of 2024, the company recalled roughly 167,000 pounds of frozen nuggets and tenders after shoppers reported strands of metal wire lodged in the product. Perdue called it a very thin piece of wire that got introduced by accident somewhere on the line. And here is the detail that ought to stop your cart. The recall swept up Perdue's Simply Smart Organics breaded chicken breast nuggets. The organic line, the exact one parents pay a premium for, so they never have to feel this. That is the quiet lesson buried inside 167,000 pounds. The word organic describes how the bird lived. It says nothing whatsoever about what unfolds on the line where the nugget gets shaped, checked, and bagged. Clean farming language and a metal detector misoccupy 2 entirely separate corners of the factory, and the label only ever mentions the first one. Once the word wire is on the notice, the rest of that front panel goes silent. And keep in mind, this is the same company that was quietly producing Applegate's nuggets too. Still, one bag manages to outdo it, because this one was pointed directly at the family cart. Number 1 on the avoid side. Tyson Fun Nuggets. Tyson is simply too large for anyone to grade with a soft hand, and this recall is why. In November of 2023, the company recalled close to 30,000 pounds, about 29,800 to be precise, of its fully cooked Fun Nuggets after shoppers turned up small, bendable bits of metal inside. One person even reported a minor injury to the mouth from eating them, and this was not some forgotten item nobody buys. These were the dinosaur ones, the playful ones, the bag built, from every angle, to look effortless and safe on a child's plate. That gap is what parks Tyson at the top of this list. Not because Tyson is uniquely sloppy, but because of the distance between the promise and the product. Metal, in the one bag most likely to sit in front of a 5-year-old. When the item aimed hardest at kids is the item that picks up the ugliest hazard, trust does not merely crack. It tips right out of the basket. And notice something about the shape while we are here. A dinosaur is not a cut of chicken. That form is molded, meaning the fun shape and a plain nugget can come off the exact same base on the exact same line. The mold targets the child. The bag targets the parent. Neither one reveals a single thing about the grade of meat underneath, which happens to be the only part that matters. The cuter the nugget looks, the less that look is actually telling you. Now here is the turn I promised, the one that resets the whole aisle. It would be easy to walk off thinking the move is obvious. Dodge the big industrial names, buy the clean premium ones instead. But watch what surfaces when you follow the money on the good list too. If this is already shifting how you see that freezer door, do me a small favor and tap the like button. It honestly helps this reach more people before their next grocery run. All right, let us turn the aisle around, because not every bag stumbled this badly. Several still make a real argument, and the strong ones do not all win for the same reason. Number 5, worth buying. Earth's Best Baked Chicken Nuggets. Earth's Best works a narrower stretch of the aisle than most, and that discipline pays off. Its nuggets come from white meat chicken, raised off antibiotics, wrapped in a whole grain breading, which already puts something firmer in a parent's hands than the usual cartoon bag theatrics. And this is not only marketing. When all recipes ran an independent lineup, Earth's Best came in fourth, with reviewers calling the chicken flavorful and the coating properly crunchy. It is not the thrilling pick of the freezer case, and that is completely fine. It is a kid food option that still passes a real outside test, which alone lifts it above most of this category. For the record, Earth's Best belongs to Hain Celestial, so it is a corporate label rather than a garage startup. But judged on the nuggets themselves, the standards stand. And if you want tougher production standards than that, the next bag climbs higher. Number 4. Smart Chicken. Smart Chicken leads with its process. The nuggets come from air-chilled white breast meat with no antibiotics ever. Air chilling matters more than the phrase lets on. Most mass-market chicken is water-chilled, plunged into shared cold water baths where the meat drinks up extra weight water you then pay for by the pound and register later as a softer, wetter bite. Air chilling skips the bath, which usually yields a firmer, cleaner, more chicken-like nugget. On the eating side, Simply Recipes flagged its seasoning and its performance in an air fryer, especially for the picky eater crowd. The standards behind it are real. But this is precisely where following the money earns its keep, and precisely where most coverage of nuggets falls quiet. Smart Chicken is a Tyson property. That same Tyson parked at the bottom of the avoid list, bought this brand back in 2018. It does not undo the air chilling or the better process, and I will not pretend otherwise. It should, though, reset your idea of what premium even means around here. Now and then the clean little challenger and the giant you are trying to steer clear of are one company holding two different bags. Now on to the brand whose chicken feels the least factory-made of anything here. Number 3. Bell & Evans. Bell & Evans wins by refusing to fake its texture, and it says so out loud. The nuggets are cut from whole breast meat pieces, not the mechanically separated or mechanically chopped material. Cast your mind back to that paste I described a few brands ago, the ground bone and tissue slurry that finds its way into cheaper nuggets and gives bone fragments a door in. This is the mirror image of that, and it is the most important line on the entire bag. You register it the second you bite. You can see it in the ragged, real shape, and the outside verdicts agree. All recipes slotted it in second, praising a juicy middle and a crisp shell, while Parade handed it the top spot in its own roundup. And this is where the ownership story finally swings in your favor, because I have been rough on the money trail so far. Bell & Evans is the one genuinely independent name across this whole lineup. It runs under the Seckler family through a private Pennsylvania company with no outside investors and no conglomerate sitting above it, and the brand dates all the way back to 1894, making it among the oldest branded chicken companies in the country. In an aisle where nearly every clean-looking bag turns out to belong to a giant, that independence is not a throwaway detail. The catch is the price. And for a child raised on the fast food shape, this may taste a shade less processed than what they expect. That is not a defect. That is the whole idea. Number 2. Just Bare. Just Bare wrapped a very tidy story around this product, and the story mostly holds up. The bites start from boneless breast, skip antibiotics entirely, carry no artificial ingredients or preservatives, and come from birds raised cage-free on farms in the United States. Any brand can print pleasant words on a bag, but Just Bare also came through the tasting. It landed first in the All Recipes lineup, and Simply Recipes went as far as calling it the only frozen nugget they actually wanted to keep restocking, praising tender, juicy meat and a breading that never got too thick. The figures reinforce the pitch, too. A serving runs somewhere around 16 grams of protein against roughly 540 milligrams of sodium. Run our salt support ratio on that, and you land near 34, well under half of Encore's number. This is what a balanced nugget looks like once you do the arithmetic. But you sensed a catch coming, because we are chasing the money all the way to the bottom. Just Bare is owned by Pilgrim's Pride, which is itself controlled in the majority by JBS, the largest meat company on the planet. Hold that for exactly one more brand, because it is about to matter more than it seems. The visible trade-off is cost. This is among the pricier bags on the shelf. At least, unlike a good half of this category, the money genuinely turns up in the product. Number 1 worth buying. Pilgrim's Ultimate Nuggets. Pilgrim's takes the top because it needs the fewest apologies. The bag claims all white meat breast, no antibiotics ever, nothing artificial, and no preservatives. Pleasant claims. But this one kept winning after the labels came off and real people actually chewed. Food and Wine crowned it the finest frozen nugget overall in a blind-style test, and described the verdict as unanimous. Serious Eats also declared it the winner, singling out the crisp shell, the tender inside, and a seasoning that showed up. All Recipes parked it in the top tier as well. A single rave can be luck. 4 outlets landing in the same spot is a pattern. Of this entire category, Pilgrim's is the one bag that feels least broken. It is not the cutest, not the noisiest, and not the one straining to seem healthy. Just the one that nails the basic assignment. And now the ownership thread finally cinches shut, so stay with me, because this is the fact that rearranges the aisle. Your number one, Pilgrims, and your number two, Just Bear, are not rivals. They are the same company. Pilgrims owns Just Bear, and both live under JBS. So the top of your good list, the two bags you would feel sharpest tossing in the cart, pour out of one corporate parent in two costumes. Now stack it all together. Tyson sits at the very bottom of the avoid list and also quietly owns Smart Chicken near the top of the good one. Applegate's premium bag was manufactured in a Perdue plant and owned by Hormel. Even the cheap Encore bag reports to a global meat giant. This aisle looks like 10 brands scrapping for your dollar. It is really a small cluster of enormous companies handing you the illusion of choice, then quietly selling you both sides of the same decision. The one truly independent name in the whole cast, top or bottom, was Bell and Evans. So let me give you the short filter, the one that cuts under all of it before you ever grab a bag. First, look up the recall history before you put any faith in the front of the package. You can search a brand on the FC's recall database in about 10 seconds. Tyson's Fun Nuggets had the metal recall. Wegmans drew the bone fragment alert. Perdue's organic line got pulled over wire. Applegate had the clear plastic recall, and it had it twice. None of that brands those companies unsafe forever. It just means you should quit shopping this aisle on cruise control. Second, read the salt support ratio. Line the sodium in milligrams up against the protein in grams. If the salt is hauling the whole load and the protein is thin, keep walking. Encore, at 74-1, is the easy poster child. A genuinely good nugget lands far below that. Third, hunt for the phrase whole breast meat, and keep an eye out for mechanically separated chicken. The first tells you it began as actual chicken. The second tells you it began as paste. And while we are on it, let us bust a myth, because getting this right earns your credibility back. The pink slime scandal you might be half remembering was a beef story, not a nugget one. Mechanically separated chicken is a different, federally regulated process. It is not poison. It is simply a much lower grade of what you assumed you were buying, and it is the reason bone fragments have an opening at all. Fourth, do not let the health halo words steer the decision. Organic, all-natural, humanely raised, whole grain, gluten-free. Those words can carry weight, but none of them is a safety guarantee. Perdue's recall hit its organic line. Applegate built an entire brand on reassurance. A calm-looking bag can still be a recalled one. And one final check, the quiet one that matters most. Fully cooked does not mean risk-free. Every recall on this list was about something inside the food, not about undercooking. Heat kills bacteria. It does not fish out metal. There is one more tell worth 30 seconds, and it lives in the ingredient list rather than the marketing. Turn the bag over and read the first couple of ingredients in order. On a nugget worth buying, the opening word is chicken, and it carries on into things you actually recognize. On a weaker one, water shows up almost right away, often propped there by a phosphate solution that helps thin meat cling to extra liquid. That water is not a gift. It is weight you pay for by the pound and then taste as a soft, wet, faintly rubbery bite. So when a better bag runs $1 or $2 more, part of that money is buying the absence of that water real chicken instead of chicken plus a saltwater discount that only the manufacturer enjoys. Cheap nuggets are seldom cheap by accident. You cover the gap in salt, in filler, and in water weight, and you cover it on every bag you carry home. So here is where you actually stand now. with the packaging no longer talking over you. You understand the salt support ratio, and it lets you read any nugget bag in about 5 seconds. You know what mechanically separated chicken is, and why whole breast meat is worth the extra money. You can spot a health halo as marketing rather than protection. And you can see the illusion of choice, the way 10 brands on the shelf fold back into a few giant companies perched on both sides of the aisle. Recalls first, numbers second, ownership third, packaging dead last. That is the freezer aisle tidied up. 5 bags to reconsider because they haul around real safety baggage or a nutrition trade that does not survive scrutiny. And 5 that earn their space because they still hold standards, credibility, and outside proof, even when the corporate parent behind them is not the one you would have guessed. The core lesson is plain. This category survives on camouflage. Some bags hide behind dinosaur molds. Some hide behind soft health language. Some hide behind a low sticker, and some hide behind an enormous parent company you never spot on the front. But the instant you weigh recalls, numbers, and who actually owns the name, the whole aisle turns legible. If this changed how you will look at that freezer door, do one thing with it. Send it to the parent in your life who grabs the dinosaur bag on autopilot. 30 seconds from you spares them a worse habit. And stay close, because the next freezer breakdown might be rougher than this one. Fish sticks, frozen tenders, or breakfast sandwiches. One of those shelves is concealing far more than it admits.